Good evening, everybody. Welcome to our special education town hall. My name is Tim Terranova, and I'm the proud superintendent of the Victor Central School District. We are doing this in a unique fashion. We're actually in the auditorium. We have some audience members tonight, and I know there's many people watching from home on the typical Facebook Live town hall through the Victor website or the Victor Facebook site. So it's glad to have you here tonight. This is a specific town hall for parents of students with disabilities around questions regarding our students with disabilities. I'm excited to have with me Leanne Gemeindl, who is our Director of Special Education. Leanne was actually hired July 1st. We are lucky to have her extensive experience in special education, both as a teacher and an administrator, both in New York State and Connecticut. We lured her back to New York State, and we're incredibly happy to have her here. So I'm going to turn it over to Leanne in a few seconds. I just want to let people know that, as superintendent, the motto here is it's about all kids, and we need to do whatever we can to make sure all kids are successful. And so that's why no matter what challenges kids face or whatever situation they're in, whatever program they're in, we make sure that they belong to us, and we do whatever it takes, again, to make sure our kids are successful. This COVID crisis has created challenges for everybody. We certainly understand that there may be some unique challenges for our students with disabilities and our families of students with disabilities, which is why we really want to answer questions, talk a little bit about it. We'll be as transparent as possible with you. If we don't have an answer, we'll tell you. And then we're going to begin to work through some of these things as our kids come to Victor Central School a week from tomorrow, actually. So the format's going to be, I'm going to turn it over to Leanne. She's going to talk a little bit about our special education services. And then we actually have some questions that I know some parents and family members have submitted already. We're going to try to answer as many of those as possible. And then we're going to take live questions both from the audience and, if this works on my computer, Facebook Live as well, because I know people are submitting them online. As is typical with these town halls, we may not get to every question. If we don't, over the next 2 days, we're going to try to answer all of them that are online. So those are the protocols. Glad you could join us either live or via the internet. And I'd love to turn it over now to Ms. Gemeindl, who's going to talk more about our specific services.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to our Special Education Town Hall. First, I would like to tell you how pleased and proud I am to be here tonight representing Victor families, Victor teachers, and the school district as it pertains to special education. I couldn't be happier to be able to have come back home and work in such a fantastic district such as Victor. So thank you. I want to first say that the mission of our special education department really revolves around inclusion and doing what is best for children. That has always been a theme in Victor schools, but as far as me being the new director, that's something that I plan on strengthening as we move forward as a school district. The mission of our special education department is that we are committed to providing individualized educational support in the least restrictive environment, and we will always consider least restrictive environment first. We seek to foster self-reliant and confident lifelong learners who in turn will become responsible and productive citizens in a changing world. This is best achieved through a collaborative effort between students, parents, educators, and the community. And something that's very important to me is relationships with families. And so I'm very happy to have this opportunity to speak to all of you.
Can I just check?
Of course.
Is everybody here out there? You okay? All right, just checking.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you. With that being said, I mentioned the focus on inclusion, but I also want to stress consistency and continuity of programs and services so that as a district we can best serve your children. Right now from the state, our mandate is to implement student IEPs to the greatest extent possible under the district's reopening plan. And I'd like to assure you that this has been a very thoughtful planning process as my assistant director, Julie Bitely, who's here with me tonight. Julie and I worked very hard over the summer to consider all factors and trying to figure out how we can bring the most of our special education students back to school 5 days a week safely. So with that being said, I'd like to just go down regarding each building, which programs we are able to bring back and in which ways. Starting with ECS, Early Childhood School, our 1211 self-contained programs will attend each day, 5 days a week. At the Victor Primary School, our 1213 program will attend each day, and our 811 program will also attend each day. At the Victor Intermediate School, our 1213 program will attend each day, and our 811 program will attend each day. At the junior high, our CT classes, 1511 students will attend 2 days in person, following the hybrid model, and 3 days online. At the senior high, our 1213 class will attend each day with the exception of Wednesdays, as Wednesdays will be an online learning opportunity. Our CT classes, our 1511 classes will attend 2 days in person and then 3 days online following the hybrid model. Related services will be provided in person when kids are in the building and then also via Zoom as the related services people can schedule those. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a few minutes. Google Classroom is going to be the preferred online platform for learning, and our special education teachers do have access to regular ed teachers' Google Classroom so that they can modify curriculum as needed or assignments as needed for children. Some of them may also have their own Google Classroom if they are going to push out assignments to individual students. It might be a little easier for them. And then related services, we're talking about having a combined Google Classroom for all related services so that they can organize their rosters a little different. So what we're trying to do in one sense is limit the amount of Google Classrooms that parents have to check in with, but also streamline things for our teachers and students the best we can. But more information will come from your child's teacher regarding that, but Google Classroom will be the platform used. One piece of documentation that families will receive regarding their children's IEP is called the Continued Education Opportunity Plan. This plan is mandated documentation from the state, and essentially what it says, or what it will say, it will have your child's name, demographic information, it will have the IEP goals that are currently on your child's IEP, and then right next to it, it will tell you what IEP services your child is getting via a hybrid model, if it is the 4 days a week, if they're in the 1213 program, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. If they're in the 5 days, nothing should change unless it's a related servicing scheduling issue. So if you keep in mind our mandate is to implement the IEPs the greatest extent possible, we're going to say to you, here's documentation that we know what's on your child's IEP. Here's what we're able to do given the Department of Health guidelines and our social distancing restrictions. And that gets uploaded to the state. A parent gets a copy and the district has a copy. And that ensures communication between all parties involved and people responsible for your children's education. Students regarding related services will be able to access their related services, and that, if you're not sure what I'm talking about, that's speech and language therapy, physical therapy, occupational therapy, music therapy, hearing impaired therapy, either via Zoom, like I said, which is teletherapy, or 100% if the 100% online option is chosen. There might be different ways that the related service providers reach out to you to schedule those Zoom sessions. So for example, if your child has a 2 out of 4 day speech and language session, for example, what we're asking our related service providers is to see your children when they are in the building and try to schedule time when your child is here. If that's not feasible, your child may be invited to another Zoom session on a Thursday or Friday, or possibly a Wednesday, so that they're then invited to an appropriate group to have those services delivered. So for some children, it might look one way. For other children, it might look the other way. But again, the intent is to deliver those services to the greatest extent that we can. And that scheduling will be talked about with you and just letting you know when that would happen. I want you to know that I realize that not attending school on a daily basis is less than ideal for our students. But in order to abide by social distancing guidelines and Department of Health guidelines, these essentially right now are the model choices that we have to offer. Until we have any restrictions lifted, we can't make any exceptions regarding those models. And one thing I wanted to explain, because I've gotten a lot of phone calls and emails from concerned parents, and so first I'll please know that I understand, as does Julie, your questions, concerns about your children getting the services that they need and deserve. But part of that social distancing is that if we have kids come on other days, it bumps the numbers up, which then increase the class size, which then it doesn't meet the restrictions. So does that make sense to some of you who are here today? So there's some questions about, we don't have the staffing, we don't have the space, and so we've really done the absolute best we can in getting all children here. So it's just important to me that you know that. Children who are 100% online, we have expectations that we have shared with their teachers and building principals as well. So special education students who select 100% online learning will have access to one or multiple Google Classrooms, depending on their age or grade level. So high school, it might be a little bit different, as they have different select classes. Special education teachers, as I mentioned, will have access to those classrooms in order to modify assignments. They may also have some digital activities or a screencastify video lesson from the teacher pushed out to them. This option is primarily an independent model. Students will also have access to related services via Zoom, teletherapy, as schedules allow. And modified lessons will be pushed out to students weekly. We also have asked teachers, or special education teachers, to have contact with parents weekly, whether it be via Zoom, a phone call, or email. So although your children, if you've decided that they're 100% online, they're still part of our district, they're still part of our school community, and we want to make sure that they get the related services that they need and have access to their teacher as best as we can. If you are choosing to homeschool your child, which is different than choosing the 100% online option, that's an entirely different pathway. If you are choosing to homeschool your child, you will need to call the special education office and ask one of our very knowledgeable secretaries to assist you with withdrawing your child from Victor and then making decisions about related services and what that might look like. So I just don't want anyone to be confused with homeschooling versus the 100% online option. Those are two different things. Some additional information that I'd like to share. I'm sure many of you have questions about initial evaluations that perhaps were halted due to COVID-19 in March or April, where some testing for eligibility may have been planned for your child, or possibly a reevaluation was planned for your child. Those are going to be completed in the most timely manner possible. We will start as soon as we can with the children who were due anywhere from March to June last school year, and start with those children first. At the same point, we know that we have new timelines to meet for this school year. And so we've asked special education teachers to look at those timelines and then reach out to either Julie or myself to help schedule some of those in the most timely manner possible for your children. All of our CSE meetings that we are holding will be held via Zoom to limit the number of visitors to our campus and buildings. So we will continue that. We've held a number of CSE meetings so far, and actually the Zoom model has worked out pretty well. We've also had some questions regarding mask exemptions. There is a specific form for a mask exemption that has to go to your child's physician and then get sent to the building nurse. If you need that exemption form, you can either contact your child's school building or the special education office, and we can send that to you. There also has been some questions about children who have low tolerance for wearing a mask. We have a lot of kids and who that might be the case for. What we've talked about is some social story teaching for those children, some behavior strategies for those children, positive reinforcement for wearing the masks for those children, also possibly using face shields, plexiglass, for those kids, and making sure that those children are distanced 6 feet apart from other children in the room as well. However, with that being said, we're going to be taking data on those children and the strategies that have been used to reinforce their mask wearing And whether or not we're successful, we'll also be in contact with the families. So you'll be notified if that's becoming a problem or something that we're having to work with your child at school. I think I went over all of my information, Dr.
Was it-
Terranova. Yeah, I'm not sure if,
Want me to ask some questions?
sure, I think we're at the questions, but I can go over some of the ones that I have first if you like.
Yeah,
or-
we're also getting, we have, so we have some people in our audience, which is awesome. We also have around 125 homes watching and are submitting questions.
That's
So
great.
this is one of the first times we've done the hybrid, no pun intended, with online and in person people watching. So want to thank Aaron Isaacs, who you can't see right now, who always is here and does an incredible job making sure that we're actually being broadcast out on the internet world and just in general with all the setup here. That's his work. So thank you, Aaron. Let me ask a couple of questions from here, and then we could answer a couple from there, and then we'll have the audience
Okay.
ask some questions. So one is, how is Victor making up for any owed hours on the IEP? If the district cannot provide the services outlined in the IEP, is the district arranging for compensatory services?
Okay, that's an excellent question. Right now, the state has not given us a lot of guidance on compensatory services. Any compensatory services that we have given have been on a case-by-case basis, depending on what services a child did not have and the reason why. Right now, because of the pandemic, is not a reason for us to, per the state, to provide compensatory services as of yet. However, with that being said, Julie and I have been looking very carefully at a case-by-case basis where some of compensatory services were needed due to maybe individual needs of that child. But that is a question that when I've had directors' meetings that have come up, but we haven't gotten clear guidance yet as to what the rules are for compensatory services.
And then they want us to raise our voice a little bit,
Okay,
all right?
will do.
So we can hear. If kids cannot physically come in opposite days that they are in school, can families choose to Zoom related services on those opposite days to not take them away from academics while in school?
So that depends on the number of children who are already receiving their services in person on those days. So, for example, if a speech and language pathologist has 4 children in a group and 4 kids need to Zoom in, that is not feasible for any of those children. So that has come up in the guidance that I've given is to our service providers, you have to talk to the families, take a look at your schedules, and see what the needs are. So it's really not a yes or no answer. It's more of it depends on the number of kids who are in person, and it depends on the number of children who are asking to Zoom in. It also depends on if there are appropriate groups available during those times, because if one child needs articulation service, but another child needs a completely different, maybe a language service, we can't put those children together to meet their IEP goals and objectives in a group. So there's a lot of logistics and a lot of different variables that go into answering that question.
Let's see here. Sorry, Leanne. Can one-on-one teacher aid support occur on days when the kids are not in scheduled? In other words, I think they're asking is, are one-on-one teachers aides being able to help virtually when the kid's not there? Which I think is a challenge because they'll be working with other
Correct.
kids.
Right. So it is a challenge because our aides are working with other children on the days when your child might not be in school. So say if your child comes on a Monday, Tuesday and has a one-on-one aide, they might be working with other children on the Thursday, Friday. With that being said, we are having aides Zoom in to meet with kids when the children are home, those children who have one-on-one aides. The teacher has to schedule that Zoom meeting and has to be able to have some kind of supervision over the aide working with your child. The aide's not a certified teacher. They cannot schedule the Zoom meeting, and it would be reteaching content, not any direct first teaching. So it would be supporting your child either in reteaching or working on an assignment. So right now, we're working on the aid schedules. So I'll know more once the schedules are finished as far as who is available during times that children might need that support at home.
You want to answer a couple of the ones that we came in with?
Sure.
And then,
Yep.
thank you.
Sure. Okay. So one question that came to us earlier, if school shuts down and goes back to online learning, or if kids need to be at home in quarantine, will students receive live Zoom instruction for all related services? So for example, if a child has to be home for some reason and now they're online or in quarantine, yes, the answer is yes. This could be a combination of live or pre-recorded videos based on students' individual needs. So if they can access a related service, it depends on how that child's feeling. I'm wondering if they're sent home. If they're sick, obviously they wouldn't be well enough to participate, but if for some reason they are, or if we shut down, then those related services will be provided via Zoom and teletherapy. Let's see, another question was, will it be a problem in a general ed setting if children that are inclusive won't wear a mask and can't distance 6 feet? I touched on that a little bit, so just know we'll be monitoring that, teaching social stories, behavioral strategies to encourage and enforce children wearing a mask if they have low tolerance to that. But if it becomes something ongoing, then we would ask to meet with the parent so we can think about some other solutions to that. Because to ensure the safety of your child and all the other children and staff in the building, everyone needs to have their mask on when they're here. Let's see, there was another question about do we have enough appropriate PPE for special classes and staff for kids to see mouths and expressions? Yes, we do. The appropriate PPE is available, and also some additional is being ordered just to ensure that we have the quantity that we need. But we have face shields for all of our related service providers. We also have face shields for our teachers in special classes. We have clear masks, so the mask is on, but it's really a clear section right in the front so that children can still see their teacher's expressions, and for any kind of therapy, they can see their teacher's mouth. And then we also have plexiglass screens that are kind of like a 3-sided divider, so to speak. So if they need that, they can just sit comfortably in a chair and then have that divider around them. So we do have the PPE. We have gloves for everybody, whoever needs that. We have goggles, protective eyewear for any TCIS trained staff. Trying to think. I think that's it. I think that's everything that we needed.
Any other questions you got right there?
No.
So I'm going to keep asking questions from Facebook, but if people in the audience have a question, if you want to just line up behind a microphone, either behind one of them behind you, you certainly can, and then I'll kind of look up, and when I see you ready, I'll ask you to ask your question. Just want to make sure you have the ability to ask any questions you might have as well, because we have plenty of time. Again, we have a large group. We have over 127 people watching. All right, so let's see. Can parents request reevaluations of their child upon a return to school?
You can request it. There are a couple of factors that go into that. When was the last time your child was tested? And the request cannot be due to a COVID-19 concern. So the pandemic is not a reason to ask for that reevaluation per the state. So it's something that we could say, well, can we look at some curriculum-based measures for your child? I know a lot of parents are worried about regression, or they haven't learned everything clearly that they would have learned if the kids were in school, and that goes for all children. Right now, as far as IEPs, we are under the guidance of not amending any IEPs for children. And again, the pandemic, we've been given guidance, is not any reason for asking for a retention. So I'm just letting you know what the guidance is, but that's not to say that we can't have conversations about why are you asking for that? What do you think your child's needs, and how else can we work to find a solution? Something that you should know about me is that collaboration and compromise are very important to me, as well as communication. So sometimes the answer is we really can't do that, but what other creative ways can we meet what you're asking? And so I think that's just important to know.
And then I'll answer a couple, because you've been doing a lot of work.
Sure.
But if I mess something up, just add something.
I'll jump in.
So will students with an IEP be provided a device so they can access Zoom for the related services? Up until today, I was unaware therapies would be provided via Zoom. Yes, we have tried to save, we've distributed hundreds of Chromebooks to the community, but we are definitely saving some, and I can't guarantee everybody will get one still, but I know that we've saved some Chromebooks for certain groups of people, including students with disabilities, our ELL students. So if you need a Chromebook, and here's the problem, I don't have the email. You don't remember the email for this, but to request a Chromebook, would you?
I don't. I believe it's online though, and also if your child needs assistive technology, with per their IEP, the technology department has a list of all those children and what their AT needs are,
Yep.
and you can get that if you have not already.
So I would say, I'm sorry I don't have the email address. You could go online to get that email address right on our reopening page, or you could call your child's building, your school building, and the secretary can give you that email. Or certainly email or call the special education department.
Yep.
But we should have some Chromebooks available. If a child cannot tolerate a mask, can he or she wear a face shield? I know Leanne talked a little bit about that. So let me just explain again our mask policy. Face shields do not replace a mask, so you can't wear a face shield and not wear a mask. They don't protect your children from COVID. So all our kids need to wear masks pretty much all the time, except for mask breaks, which have to occur with greater than 6 feet distance when the child is not moving, and for short periods of time, 3 to 5 minutes. And of course, they're not going to wear a mask when they're eating lunch. So if a child, however, is struggling with wearing a mask, that's where our special education teachers and student services staff come into play and can help out with that. And definitely we could do a lot of teaching around that. So very few kids are able to be exempt from wearing a mask medically. It has to go through your own doctor as well as our doctor. So what we're trying to do, though, is be obviously very understanding of the situation and working especially with our younger children and any kids with sensory needs to really just work through it with their special education providers and teach them how to wear it, and we'll be understanding of that. But ultimately, we can't replace it with a face shield because a face shield does not protect us. We can also not use the gator type mask, which looks like a neck guard, or bandanas. They do not help. In fact, there's pretty significant evidence that says gaiters actually promote the spread of the virus through droplets more than not wearing a mask. So they're inefficient, and county and state health departments are saying that they're not recommended at all. So we're only allowing masks. We do have thousands of masks available, so you do not need to provide one for your child. You certainly can if you want to, but we have plenty of masks both for buses and in classrooms to support the safety of everybody. Let's see. Oh, great. Somebody actually sent it in. The email for tech support, if you need a Chromebook, is techhelp@victorschools.org. Techhelp, one word, @victorschools.org. So thank you for that. Let's see. In the hybrid models, will kids have work on days they are not in school? And how will they be supported when at school if they have a one-to-one aide and special education teacher to support them? How will they be supported when at school? So the first question, in the hybrid model, will kids have work on days they are not in school? My answer is yes.
Yes.
You want to talk more about that? Or?
Sure. So again, if your child has a one-on-one aide, what we're asking is that the special ed teacher set up a time that your child can have a Zoom video meet with the aide under the supervision of the teacher. So what that means is the teacher has access to hop into that Zoom meeting, make sure everything is going well, make sure everything is okay, give the aide guidance on what struggles that the child might be having. It might not be a full, block period of time. It might be just a check-in on a daily basis, we have to look at the aid schedules once again to see where they may have been assigned on different days in order to ensure that we can do that. But our first thought is yes, and we'll try to make sure that that happens at least one of the days when your child is not in school.
Sorry, I didn't see you back there. That was
okay.
my fault.
I'm hiding.
I was hoping you weren't leaving, but
Oh, no. I just have a, should I speak? Yeah. I just have a question regarding the special education in an overall standpoint. If my daughter's been in special education for 2 years, she's going into 5th grade this year, and I'm curious how, to see her progressing over these years, if the special ed she's not improving, and how, going forward, considering that she needed individualized care during the COVID, she needed assistance, and going forward, considering that deficit, I'm concerned how the special education staff is going to approach situations like this.
First of all, thank you for your question. That's an excellent question and probably one that many families have. What we've talked about with our teachers is they have to do some baseline, I'm not going to say assessment, but some baseline screening, some curriculum-based assessment on the kids when they first get back to school so that we know where are those gaps. What did the children learn and what did they not learn that we really needed them to when they weren't with us? It's just reality without us having as much control over those things as we'd like to. So when the kids come in, they're going to be looking at, say, your daughter's going into 5th grade? Okay, so here's everything that she should know for 5th grade. Let's do some just pre-screening to see how far away is she from the initial 5th grade curriculum, from the starting points of 5th grade. We may have to do some backwards teaching and saying, okay, I have to make sure all the kids know this before I can teach them the next step. And so we're going to be looking at that and keeping data on that, every single special ed teacher, because we can't move forward if we're not sure where the kids are coming from.
And I brought her to Sylvan and had them do an assessment just before school started, just to see where she was at. And she's still at the level she was in she's in like a 2nd or 3rd grade level going into 5th grade. And I'm really concerned at this point because I'm not seeing how she's getting the education that I'm sending her for, and considering how far she's behind. I don't know what my options are, I guess.
Well, you can certainly send those to me.
Okay.
If you'd like to, and I'd be glad to take a look at that, either Julie or myself. But with that being said, I'd really need to, it is a specific case kind of question, but to look back and say, where was she at her last assessment that the district did? Let's take a look. I'm not sure if it's the same assessments that Sylvan did, if it's something different, but really what we can do is take a look at what her needs are, change her IEP goals and objectives if we need to at all to adjust where she is now. And, we're going to do things better this time. And I can say that because I'm here. And so, what I can say to that is when you know better, you do better. And even the district that I was at in Connecticut, we didn't really know. The first 2 weeks, everyone was shut down and we had zero direction. And then everyone is scrambling. Oh my gosh, these kids are home. We have to teach them something. And then it was, oh my gosh, how are we going to do specialized instruction and these kids are at home? Now we have them at least here 4 days a week. Some children here 5 days a week, at the very least 2 days a week. So we have access to kids now that we didn't have the last 3 months. So we have to put that just in perspective a little bit because at least now we have access to the kids that we didn't before. But again, knowing what we know now based on our past experiences, we're going to do better. And those are things that we are going to have to really target, not just for your daughter, but for all of our kids. Absolutely.
we had another question from the audience.
Yes, hi. Can you hear me clearly?
Yep.
Okay. Why was there no special education during the spring? I mean, Zoom doesn't seem to be a new technology. We were using it then, and my kid only went to see her teachers twice a week for an hour. Why didn't speech therapists or special education jump in there at some point?
Are you talking about March through June?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't have an easy answer for you for that one. I mean, I know that we tried to do our best with the technology, but we were somewhat restricted in technology in terms of what we could offer in the district in March, April, and May. I know that overall our special ed teachers did, I don't know what your experience was, but I know generally from talking to them and talking to parents, special ed teachers really tried very hard to communicate with their kids and work through those systems. But, you know, as Leanne was saying, I think we learned a lot through that, and that we have to continue to evolve in our use of technology, especially the synchronous and live teaching that's got to happen with our special ed population. I do think, hopefully, that the in-person days, whether they're 2 or 3 or more for certain kids, will be helpful to that. And I do think, too, it's great, you know, and I know this is not easy all the time, but I think you have to, as parents, continue to communicate with your children's teachers. So, you know, especially see how it goes the first 2 weeks, both in and out of school. And then if you have questions around it, you know, reach out to that teacher and say, listen, is this possible? Can we do this? This seems to be working, this doesn't. And we'll be able to tell you if we can or can't. So, you know, again, I don't have a great answer for you on what happened between March and June, other than the fact that we tried to adapt as best we could. And now we've had some time, certainly, to plan for this. And you should see, especially with the in-person learning, some improvements around that.
Okay, well, a quick reply to that. 2 emails from multiple therapists in March, April, June. I'm just going to come out and say this. My kid doesn't reply to emails. I don't really think that was their best foot forward. I know that wasn't an easy answer for you to say, and I'm not going to rough you up for it, but that's where I stand on that. As a follow-up, in regards to what you were saying, Ms. Gamidel, about the pre-screening in the first few days of school, why was there no pre-screening done over the summer? It's only happening now, and we're going to be using valuable time for in-person learning now to see where we are. That could have been done over the phone. That could have been done over Zoom, July and August.
Thank you for your question. I think that I have actually a couple things to say about that. First of all, really being thoughtful and trying to plan for the reopening of school took a lot of our time. I can say it took a lot of my time as a new incoming director, trying to figure out how best to bring as many students back as we could. The guidelines changed almost on a daily basis, which made it very difficult to try and figure out what we actually had the capacity to do as far as bringing kids back. A lot of the pre-screening, what I'm talking about, is not really a global test. It really, in my view of what that could look like, is sitting down with the child and looking through, like, say, the previous years, maybe like an end-of-the-year test, and what the kids would have gotten at the end of the year. Maybe it's the last few unit tests, looking at that, the last 2, I'm going to say maybe the last 3 unit tests in, say, math. What can the kids do from that? They're gonna have to go back and look at what reading units, was it theme, character setting, what don't the kids know that they need to know for the grade level that they're gonna come this fall. So some of the things that I'm envisioning our special education teachers doing really couldn't have been done through Zoom, one at a time. And also the other answer is, we had extended school year happening this year, but in order to ask the teachers to do this, and this is above my level of answer, but I don't know how we would have been able to pay all of our teachers to do that, and I'm just being honest. I don't know logistically or conceivably how we would have been able to do that, because we would have need all hands on deck, not just the, maybe 8 teachers we had for summer school. So it's a big, question, and I understand why. All I can do is say, this is what needs to happen when these children are in front of us, because we have to know what they're missing, because so many of the skills build on each other, and we can't just jump in midway and think they learned something that they didn't. And so that's why I think some of that pre-screening, pre-assessment, mostly curriculum-based measures, not a standardized test, but those curriculum-based measures have to happen so that our teachers know how to forward plan for the upcoming school year.
Thank you for that. And final one before I give up the mic, just a general question. Would you mind telling me when we should expect to hear from transportation?
So my understanding is you don't know what bus your kid's riding on right now?
No, sir.
So I would say, I don't have that answer off the top of my head, but I would assume that you're going to hear from them by Friday at the latest. And if you don't hear from them by tomorrow or Friday, you can either email transportation director or email me. Okay?
Thank you.
You're welcome. Can we talk a little bit about co-taught classrooms, please? Because I know there's some questions just around what that might look like. because we have students with disabilities who are going to be here 2 to 3 days a week in a co-taught classroom, and what type of support they might get, especially when they're not in school.
Sure. So for our co-taught students, again, we're asking the teachers to do best practice and collaborate together. We're hoping, and in most cases this is happening, they're having a common plan time so that they can either, meet, sit down, and look at what lessons are coming up, and so the special education teacher can help the regular teacher make any changes, accommodations to those lessons. As follow-up, when the kids are at home, the special education teacher, because we ask that they're reaching out to students as well, would be fielding any questions or ensuring that the students have understanding. That check for understanding is going to be critical when the children are not with us. So it's not so much tell me what you don't understand, it's tell me what you know about this. Repeat what that direction was, and having the kids repeat it back to you so that they know what they're able to do so that they can do it independently. So it's going to be a lot of communication, a lot of collaboration, and a lot of check-ins at home.
Sorry, go ahead.
My first question is about how were the therapists, or how are the therapists getting trained to provide the Zoom therapy? And this stems from just observing different therapists using Zoom as a platform during the summer when my sons had extended school year, and then also observing what type of Zoom therapy they received during those first few months, March, April, May. Because I guess where I'm coming from is, have they been given some training, and do they feel confident in their ability to provide Zoom should everything shut down? I know I've heard rumblings in different places that some providers are much more confident than others. Some have kind of said, no, I won't do it. So I just wanted to see what the district had to say about that.
Thank you. So it's not negotiable. I can tell you that. Our related services providers are much more apt to do that right now, and I'm not using the right words, but I want to say they're able to do that because we provided the training that did not happen prior to the shutdown. We weren't prepared for that. We're not a one-to-one district, but I can tell you we just about are now, I think, as far as getting the devices to children and ordering of Chromebooks for all kids. So we didn't have the training, but the district has been doing training every day during superintendent's conference days on technology, and Zoom is one of the trainings. So yes, some folks were not that they weren't willing, I think they didn't know how, and they didn't have the training that they need. Today when we met with everyone, I think people are much more comfortable with the idea of doing that, and they know it's got to be part of their practice, given the hybrid model and given that we have children who are 100% online. We're not going to leave those children behind when they're home. So we have to make sure that they have access to their related services. That's why I said they'll be invited to participate in a group that's already happening in the building, or like I said, try to include as many sessions as possible per the IEP that we can by inviting them into other groups when they're not in school. So we've talked about that. Our department knows it's not negotiable. It's part of what we do now in Victor, and the training has been provided to everybody who needed it.
Okay. Just a follow-up question, as we go forward, how will those? I guess my question is, how will they get feedback on how they're doing with Zoom therapy?
So Julie and I plan on doing observations, informal, non-evaluative observations, but just making sure that everything is looking the way it needs to look from a related service provider perspective. We have teacher leaders who we've also been working with who can also provide some of that assistance, support, and feedback. Some people, it's just they're not that comfortable with the platform, but they're getting there. And it's not something that's really in their wheelhouse. And technology sometimes can be intimidating for a lot of people as well. There were some concerns about privacy laws and things like that some people were hesitant to use Zoom, to be honest, but we've put that to bed and consulted with our attorneys, and privacy confidentiality is not an issue. regarding any Zoom or teletherapy. So I think that alleviated a lot of stress that some of our related service providers were having. And also, I think when we met with them today, we also tried to ensure that they knew that they're supported. And that, listen, if you're not doing this correctly, if you don't feel comfortable, then let's talk about it. Let's do some practice. Julie and I are available to support our teachers and our related service providers. That's a priority for us right now, to make sure that those people then are delivering the best services and education to your children. It's very important to us. So I'm hoping that you're going to see some improvement based on the training that people have and their comfort levels getting a little bit better.
Thank you. I have one more question, if
Sure.
that's okay. Hypothetically speaking, if there's a student who's doing the hybrid model but has had zero success doing any of the online learning that happened in March, April, May, June, July, August, maybe my son, what kind of options or what kind of training or help or supports can you provide for parents who are in that difficult situation of trying to provide the support that their child needs, but really having zero success with this online model?
I think looking at that on a case-by-case basis and really talking about what's happening at home with the, is it attention to the Zoom? I've heard a lot of, the kids having a hard time sustaining attention to that. Are there different ways that we can help you, some different strategies, some parent training that we can work on? But I do think it's case-by-case, coupled with your special education teacher, related service providers, people that we have available that know your child really well, to say, hey, let's try this, let's try that. And I do think it will be trial and error. Lots of kids, Zoom is not ideal for them, and some kids do really well with online learning. So I do think it's just case by case, and really thinking about how we can help support you so that we can help alleviate some of that stress that you're dealing with at home.
Thank you.
Of course.
I'll be right with you. How's that? You're fine. I don't know if there's an earlier question about continued education opportunity plans.
Yeah.
Good. And when are they going to be shared, and do parents have input on them?
Okay. Thank you for that question. So the continued education opportunity plans, that's the documentation where we are acknowledging what's on your child's IEP and then acknowledging what we're able to do, given if it's hybrid, 100% online, 4 days a week, 5 days a week for your child. I've asked our special education department to finish those up by October 16th. Because right now they are working, just keep in mind, on scheduling, grouping, lesson planning. When do I have, my Monday, Tuesday kids again? When do I have my Thursday, Friday kids again? Who's coming every other Wednesday? And also keep in mind, just like your kids, these folks haven't been in their building since March. And everyone is experiencing a little bit of stress, anxiety, a little bit of trauma coming back to school. And I think that's just a natural thing. So I did want to give our teachers and related service providers time to do that and to do it thoughtfully. So those will be uploaded, like I said, to IEP Direct, that the state can see that if they choose, and they will also be sent home to parents. As far as having input, it's really just going to be a reflection of the services that your kids are getting, either hybrid or, like I said, in whatever model that they are in. So if you have a question about it after you receive it, I think that is absolutely valid, but there shouldn't be anything on that plan that is not what is actually happening. So as far as input, I don't see what input would actually need to be provided, except one thing I want to say, there is a parent section that will say that the teacher touched base with you on such and such a date to review it or to go over it. So, and any other concerns that you might have. So there is a parent input section, but not so much as, well, parent wanted 3 sessions, we could only do 2, because we don't really know how that's going to unfold as the school year happens. I hope that answers the person's question.
And you'll hear Leanne mention Julie Bitely, who's our assistant director for special ed. She's actually in the front row, right in front of me. So I'm glad she's here, and I appreciate it. And she's going to do a ton of work with our special education program as well. Go ahead.
So just a few questions, but I did want to start off with a compliment. On the website, I thought it was so helpful for the high school at least, and I'm not sure about the other schools, but they posted a video, a day in the life of what things are going to look like. And I thought that was great, and that really
Yep.
helped my special needs son. So I wanted to say thank you for that. That was awesome.
Yep, that was great. Thank you for
Yeah.
that. Thank you.
Yes.
The high school did a great job with that.
They did. It was wonderful. So I guess my question is about the hybrid model. It seems in the junior high and the high school, there's really no option where the special ed kids are going every day. I guess my question is kind of what's the thought behind that and how we're going to support those kids? Are there a specific number of children that are allowed in each classroom, or how are you determining those numbers?
Yes, so the 1213 class that is a 7 through 12 program, those are the students that we are able to bring back within those two buildings. So there's one program that we were able to do so. The other ones we were not able to do because the social, and Dr. Terranova, I don't know if you want to talk about this, but the social distancing guidelines are such that we have to keep the children 6 feet apart.
And that's where my confusion is.
Right.
Because that 7 through 12, that SACS, I think, program is a self-contained classroom. So that really, that doesn't affect the numbers of the kids in the other classrooms.
Correct.
So, and it's a 15-1-1 class. So and I know that there's not 15 students, and specifically in my son's class. So that's what I was wondering, because they're splitting the kids up, but
So
you know how that number works,
Yeah.
how that social distancing works. I mean, how many kids can be in each classroom?
It depends on the size of the classroom, and it also depends on the number of adults who will be flowing through that classroom as well. So that is also something we had to consider. And then also some of the content on, say, a Monday, Tuesday is going to be retaught on a Thursday, Friday. So that's why some of those children could not come back. They either would have gotten the content twice or increased the numbers in the classroom given the other adults that would have been in there too. So having to take a look at the big picture and not infringe on the guidelines was part of that's what was, something we had to consider for those decisions.
Okay, so I hear what you're saying, but I guess that still doesn't make sense to me, because it could still, I feel like, meet the guidelines with such a small group setting. And I guess going from the hybrid model, so on Monday, Tuesday, so say my son's in the blue cohort, on Monday, Tuesday, he's going to be getting instruction. And then can you explain to me, like, I'm still not clear what's going to happen Wednesday, Thursday, Friday?
Okay. So Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday would be online learning for him, where the teachers would be giving him assignments to do either on the Monday or the Tuesday to be completed on those online learning days.
Okay, so Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, he has to do homework.
Whatever assignments the teachers would give him.
Your
can't-
child's in high school?
Yeah, so what I'm
Yes.
getting at is, what's the difference between homework and online learning?
Yes, so here's how we're trying to look at it. We're looking at it as, and people have heard me say this before, and I'm sorry if it gets kind of monotonous, but our teachers are awesome, and the professional development they're doing right now is to look at a 5-day week, right? So if I'm going to have my kids in front of me 2 days and then not in front of me 3 days, how do I take the most advantage of that 40% of the time they're in front of me? And then what can I do during that 40% of the time to make sure they're connected for the 60% of the time they're not there, as well as stay connected to them where appropriate and where I can be. So sometimes that will be, you're doing a lot of direct teaching in class, and then the kids will have things to practice with supports, depending on the needs of the students on the 3 days they're not there, with the ability to contact their teacher, right? Other times we'll do what's called, especially at the high school, sometimes we'll do what's called flipped learning, where it has to meet the needs of your kids. So if it's not appropriate for your kids, they won't do it. But ultimately, sometimes there'll be recordings and videos, and whatever you want to call them, direct teaching via recordings, where the child would watch it, practice it, and then the days they come into school, practice it more and with the feedback of the teacher in front of them. So it's not always going to be exactly the same. It's going to be on the best needs of the kids. We either need to teach new content or practice content that we already have been taught, right? So sometimes there'll be some teaching of new content where appropriate on the days they're not there, with the ability of the child to ask questions in some format. And other times they'll be practicing the content that they started to practice in person, which is more like the homework concept, right? And then they work through it. And then, you know, we need to see, because we've never done this before, hybrid model. Nobody's ever, well, I don't know if anybody, very few people have done a hybrid model before. So part of it is going to be, let's see how it goes the first 2 to 3 weeks. And you're the best judge of your kids, right? You understand, you know, how they are doing both social, emotionally, and academically. So that's where the communication with the teacher comes in. You know, one of the things as superintendent that I'm challenged by is how do we have great people who are great communicators. How do we continue that communication when kids are here half the time, right? And I think we can really utilize some of the technology through Google Classroom to support that communication. But ultimately, I think we got to give it a chance, see how it evolves, and there may be some opportunities then really to learn more when they're not in school and be engaged. I'm thinking in this particular case at the high school level, but some of it has to be worked through the first couple weeks.
And just as another question, has there any thought been given to doing a live stream for the high school students so that they're getting teaching every day, but only half the kids are in person and half the kids are not?
Yeah, so what you're saying is there any thought to just doing live teaching every day for for the kids who aren't there as well as the kids who are in person?
Correct.
We thought about that. I mean, I know the leadership staff and the instructional specialists thought about that a little bit. And so, but we really wanted to tailor the instruction to when the kids are there. And then have specific instruction and technology for the kids when they're not there, so it's somewhat separated. We felt like that was the right way to go, instead of just teaching 5 days the same, like a progression of lessons, and having the kids watch it when they're not there, because we're not sure how engaging that's going to actually be. There's some districts doing that, by the way.
Right.
And I know that. So that's a different philosophy, but I think we need to let this one evolve and adjust as needed and see how that goes the next 2 to 3 weeks, and then we can adjust if we need to. We're going to take a lot of feedback from, you know, kids and parents, and certainly feedback from our teachers on how it's going and what's not working, and we just need to adjust if needed.
Thank you. And just one final thought. So if, I guess, how will my son be supported on that Thursday, Friday when his teacher is teaching class? How can a teacher possibly support online and in person?
So we've been talking about that as well. Obviously, it's a big concern because they can't be in 2 places at once.
Right.
Right. So it's really about having access to the teachers and the teachers checking in on the kids as well. And we really, I think what Dr. Terranova said, we have to let it evolve and kind of see how it happens, but not to say to let all this time go by so that we say it's wrong, how do we fix it? So feedback is going to be very important. And for me, talking to my department and saying, and I've said this today, we cannot forget it. We cannot forget the kids when they're home because they're going to need our help. We know what they can do when they're with us, and sometimes that's limited. So certainly what they're going to be able to do sometimes on their own is going to be more limited than when we're actually with them. So that's something that we're gonna have to work on that and be very creative, but specific and intentional about how we do that.
So I guess, would it be fair to say that we should look to October to possibly have another town hall as a touch point?
I will
see-
never be opposed to having communication in town halls. That's what our job is, so certainly that's a strong possibility.
Sounds good. We'll look forward to it. Thank you.
Leanne, I know, so it's about 7:29. Can we go a few more minutes?
Of course.
Are you okay?
Yes.
Aaron, are you okay if we go a few more minutes? You sure? Because if Aaron's not able to, then we're in trouble. Evaluations have been asked about, especially our younger students, 3, 4-year-olds. Do you want to just talk a little bit about that? And some parents are either they haven't had them yet or they're a little bit anxious about it. So I just didn't know if we had some information on it.
Sure. So like I said earlier, any child who was due for an evaluation, we're going to get that done as fast as we possibly can. You also might get some information from your child's case manager about changing some of the evaluation considerations that were talked about. And I don't mean changing the content, but we have some faster ways to do some of those evaluations as well. So they might reach out to you and say, instead of this longer version with all of these subtests, maybe we can do something, a different test or a shorter test so that we can get the same amount of information but a little bit faster. So they might ask you about revising some of those testing recommendations or considerations. But like I said, we have to look back and see which children were due first and try and complete those as quickly as we can, because those are the ones that are latest, and they're going to be continued to be the latest ones if we don't, try and speed that up. We're also we may have to rely on each other for help in some of that testing. I'm not sure what that will look like yet, but I'm hoping that the Wednesdays, that we might be able to get a lot of that done so the kids can get their core instruction on the Monday, Tuesday, but maybe when they're here Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, they're getting some, pulled out for some testing. It does, we have to look at the special ed teacher schedules too. I don't know what their schedules are going to look yet. So it's just, that's a very good question. It's also a very loaded question, but I will say the ones that are due from March to June are the ones we're going to look at first.
Thank you. Go ahead, please.
I kind of have a two-part question. My son is probably going to be one of the ones, we're just starting this. He's in kindergarten this year, so this is all new to us. But he probably won't be able to wear the mask, at least in the beginning. We did send in our form. I was just curious how long that will take for the nurse on your side or the doctors on your side to approve that. And if it is approved, how does that work with as far as the bus drivers knowing, okay, when this child gets on the bus, he doesn't have to have his on, or is there a thing he's going to wear on his book bag, or how are they going to identify those kids?
So here's what I would say. If are you in contact with the nurse at the early childhood school?
I've spoken to her. She's the one that had told me about the form initially, and we gave it to our pediatrician, but she said even if our pediatrician sends it in, you guys still have to approve it. The doctor or the nurse through the school system still has to approve it, so.
Okay, yeah. So I would just stay in contact for the first part of your question. I would stay in contact with the nurse of the early childhood school. And if your pediatrician has already wrote a note to recommend it, is that what it sounds like?
Yeah.
All right, so then we have to, actually it goes to our doctor, and it should be happening, either this week or early next week. You should certainly have an answer on that.
Okay.
By early next week, midweek. Now, if the answer is no from our end, that's where you're going to need to, and I'm not saying that'll be, I have no idea, but that's where you problem solve with your child's special ed teacher and any related service providers to figure out how we're going to gradually get your child to wear that mask and work through that specific challenge. Now, if it is approved and there is an exemption for mask wearing, that's where we are very, diligent around both the bus. The bus driver will know ahead of time. We may try to, again, I don't know enough about, obviously, your child around this, but we may try to do at least a face shield, some type of face shield if they're not able to wear that. Then what happens is we just have to have greater social distancing with your child.
Okay.
And people who are closer to working with a child might wear a different type of mask that's a little more protective, or double mask, depending on what they feel like. But we have processes in place for our adults. There's right now I think there's 1 or 2 kids that have been exempted in the entire district. So that's why we're being very careful around that. So 2 options. First thing you need to know soon, right? So
Right.
If you don't hear anything by Tuesday, I would definitely talk to the school nurse and just get some information on what's going on. If they're not allowed to wear the mask, if the exemption's not allowed, then that's where your special ed teacher, especially because your child's just starting, they're going to have a great plan in place to really move it forward to have him or her more comfortable with wearing the mask. If they are exempt, like I said, we'll put in processes in place for the classroom as well as the adults that are working with your child to make sure everybody's safe.
Okay,
So,
thank you.
you're welcome. Hi,
Hello.
how you doing?
Good. How are you?
Good.
I help run and co-chair the Voice Parent Group here at the district.
I knew that.
And hello, it's me again.
That-
And I'm just getting a couple questions in from parents, and a couple of the main ones are really about the aides and the one-to-one supports. And one of them being, are we doing our best to support the children by giving them their aides from last year, and not only with the ones that are transitioning? So are a lot of the aides being reassigned their children from last year to help smooth the transition back into the district? And secondly, the question on the aides is, are they crossing over days or colors, so to speak? So if your child has Monday, Tuesday blue, is their aide meeting with other children the rest of the week?
So do you want to answer the first part, or do you want?
Sure. Yes. The first part, can you just repeat that, Sherry? Because I wasn't quite following the question.
Yeah, so are we doing our best to assign kids their aides from the previous year, which would have been last year before the shutdown, to help get them
Okay.
back in school and re-engage?
Okay, thank you. In some cases, we have. And again, the past practice has been, from what I understand, is not to do that. But again, we really are looking at what the kids need, because there are some children, we've had some requests from parents that they keep the person, the aide that their child had left, and they didn't have closure with that person. The transition to maybe a new place will be easier. But the designation of aides has been, in Victor, a building-based decision. Just now am I starting to get a little more involved in that, not having, just being new to this position and really trying to work with the principals on the situations that have come up. So I don't really have a global answer, but as it's been asked or requested by parents, Julie and I have been working with the principals to make things work the best that they can, even if it's for a temporary short amount of time. Like, let's try a 6 to 8 week transition and then slowly, kind of hand off to the next person, things like that. So we're definitely being creative in how we can do that.
And then the second part was, I believe our aides are working at the elementary level with kids every day they're there.
They are.
So I think the question was, are our teacher aides crossing cohorts, right?
Yes.
And the second question is, why is that necessary to do? And then I can answer the safety pieces around it
Right.
if you want.
It's they know those programs, they know the classroom, the teachers, and so it's very seamless to have the aides work in the classroom with different children, because they can really do that effortlessly. So that's why when some of the other questions were about, are the one-on-one aides available for the kids who are home, we're really trying to balance that. So we're trying to meet the needs of the kids who are right in front of us in person, and they might know that aide, or the aide works with that teacher, and it's just like clockwork, and everything runs smoothly. In addition to having some of those aides available to do the check-ins when with your kids when they're home, and it's hard to meet all of these needs with 100% perfection. But please know that we are trying, and we're being really thoughtful about how we do that. And again, the feedback that you have is really important. To call me up, email me, and I'll get back to you as fast as I can. I know it's not as fast as probably you'd like it to be right now, but there's been a lot going on. But just know that I value what you say, and I really will, try and help you with those types of things.
Yeah, and basically every adult in our district is working with kids across the cohorts. So we're not specialized, we don't have the staff to specialize blue and gold groups. So, our staff, obviously our buildings are cleaned. We're doing significant cleaning around that. And our staff is doing a couple things. One, they're obviously taking care of themselves, and they're not to come to work when they're sick, which is difficult to tell them to do that. But just like your kids should not be coming to school when they have a fever, when they have chills, if they have a sore throat. If they have any of those symptoms that are close to the COVID-like symptoms, they probably don't have COVID. right? They probably don't, but we have to be precautionary. So one of the things we're really trying to do, and you'll see the signs all over the place, is don't come to school when you're sick. And it's really important that our adults do that too.
And lastly, it's kind of more of a statement than a question, because I think you've been touching a little bit here and there on it. But really the biggest challenge I think that parents are feeling is, what are those supports going to look like specifically? And I know you probably can answer this at the moment, but for those home learners 100% and those hybrid learners, understanding that their aides are going to cross cohorts and not really be available, same as the teachers. They're just really concerned about what that support is going to look like for their children when at home.
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, it's certainly a valid concern. I mean, you got kids with special needs who need additional supports through an IEP, and now we're telling you that half the time or all the time, if they chose the online model, they're not going to be face-to-face. So we are trying to experiment with different ways to make sure we are staying in touch and doing the best we can to really extend their learning during that time, but we're going to have to monitor it really closely.
Thank you both.
You're welcome. Hi.
Hello. I have a question. It's not really a CSE question, but it's kind of on the periphery. We have a large population of our kids with special needs who participate in challenger sports. They're related to baseball, basketball, soccer, things of that nature. We've had a lot of feedback that they miss it, just like kids with traditional sports. As the school reopens and the facilities become available, are we going to be able to use the school facilities for some of those if we're able to maintain proper social distancing and put some structure in place around it? I guess my first thought is, can we do a challenger baseball season in the fall at the fields and maybe do it in 3 different waves, so there's 5 kids per field, something to that effect, and then, it's kind of so on and so forth for some of the other sports that the kids like to participate in.
Yeah, and is that related to Unified? Is it the same concept? Or
No,
different?
same concept, but it's outside of the school structure.
Okay.
It's volunteer-based.
Yeah, I would say 2 things. One, I would certainly be open as superintendent to talk to whoever organizes the Challenger Sports so that I could, get more information. So I'd love to talk to you one-on-one, either via phone or in person or about it. In terms of overall athletics, they're on hold right now until September 21st, roughly, somewhere between September 21st and September 28th. Potentially, that decision has not been made yet by the section as well as school districts on whether we can start the end of September. I think that decision's coming out will come out early next week. I've been a proponent through social media of attempting to start athletics and extracurricular activities in a safe way as soon as we can. So if we're going to start athletics, let me just say it this way. If we're going to start athletics for all kids, including unified sports, if we can do that, and again, that's an if still, then we should be able to, we need to meet the needs of all kids. So I've heard great stuff about Challenger Sports, so I'd love to have a conversation with you on how to try to work that out and make sure they get those opportunities, as long as we can do it, safely. So my answer is I'd love to talk to you more about it, but if we're going to start other athletics and extracurricular activities, I would want to start Challenger Sports as well.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so I kind of lost track of Facebook. I apologize. Let's just see here. My child is moving up to the junior high and will be switching classrooms frequently for the first time. Has the school considered having teachers move from room to room when possible to reduce hallway traffic? We have at the junior high. In fact, we went through 3 different models at least at the junior high, and unfortunately, after trying so hard, it was really that we were unable to do that model. It's called a cohort model, where you pretty much stay in the one spot and the teachers move around. We weren't able to do that and offer the courses we needed to at the junior high. It was attempted, but it wasn't the best way to go about doing things, so we couldn't do that. So that's why kids are moving more often, but it was certainly looked at. So I think there were a couple real quick extra help the first couple of days for kids not being able to find classes because there weren't any in-person orientations. We are certainly And I want to thank Mrs. Arnitz, who's been helping us out on Facebook tonight, one of our outstanding special ed teachers. She answered that question. Yes, teachers are always available. We're going to be very patient with our kids, all kids, in terms of where they're going and how to find their classrooms, and make sure they get the lay of the land, so to speak, because they didn't get that opportunity during orientation. And it's the same thing with what they're, coming in terms of their knowledge around learning, right? We have to be patient. They missed 3 months of in-person instruction. We have to make sure that and our teachers are incredible at this, really taking a deep breath, assessing where our kids are, both social, emotionally, and academically, getting to know our kids, building those relationships, getting some practice on the technology, right? We want to practice the technology in school so that when the kids go home, they know how to use it. A lot of that social, emotional stuff, developing those relationships, telling them it's okay. Listen, it's okay if you don't know some of the stuff you would have learned in May if you were in person. We're going to take it slow. We're going to get an understanding of that. We're going to work through it and develop those, again, those relationships and those soft skills, that emotional skills that are so important. So I just want to reassure parents that is going to happen, and that's a really big focus. It's 7:46, so I really appreciate all the questions. I will say, any of the questions we didn't get to on Facebook tonight, which is a chunk of them because there were some great questions, we will get to in the next couple days. I'll use the experts among us also with me to answer those questions, so stay tuned to that. We will do another general town hall for the community. I'm looking at the week of September 21st, so we give everybody a few days, a week and a half or so to get acclimated, see how school's going, then we can do a town hall around that. And I love the suggestion of doing a special education specific town hall sometime in October. That'd be fantastic. So that's definitely on the table for something as well. Again, I encourage you to reach out to your teachers first, build those relationships, talk to the related service providers that are supporting your kids, and stay in close contact there first, because those are your most important relationships. Leanne, first of all, thank you so much. You were unbelievable in your ability to answer these questions, and I would have been lost if you weren't here, and I appreciate Julie being here. Anything you want to end with?
No, it was my pleasure, and I just want to say I want to be visible in the buildings. So I can't wait to see your kids and watch them learn and grow here in Victor. And also, it's important to me that I'm accessible to families. So please reach out if you need to, and either Julie or I will get back to you. I know it's a stressful time. I know there's a lot of anxiety. But again, I want to go back to the first thought is always to do what's best for kids. And so please know that we're thoughtful in keeping that in mind when we're planning for your children.
Great. Thanks again, Mr. Isaac, for running the whole show. Appreciate it. And appreciate everybody joining in tonight, both live and online. And have a great night. Thank you.